them and respond to those. And then we're going to do some table discussions, which I will talk about in a little bit. So if we can switch to the PowerPoint, are we ready to do that?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. We have a process here, which is basically 4 phases to develop the plan. We're in kind of the midst of phase 1 right now, which is kind of information gathering, right? We're learning what's changed over the last 5 years. I've talked to quite a number of the people in this room already in various formats, either one-on-one or we went around and met with several neighborhood organizations. We met with the Valley Junction Foundation today, and we're just trying to talk to as many people, understand all the critical issues, doing our own research. So we went out and we've done some parking counts to look at how well utilized or not utilized some of the parking areas are in the area. We're looking at land use. We're looking at the existing zoning in the area and kind of all the things and background information that we need to do to understand really well what's happening now and understand the market in terms of where things are going and get a good feel for what you guys would like to see happening in this area. So we're in the middle of that. Part of that also was looking at kind of best practices, what's working well in other parts of the country that might be applicable to here. That's a large part of what this workshop is about this evening. We actually have another workshop coming up on December 15th right here, where we're going to do a visual preference survey. We've heard a lot of interest in developing some design guidelines that'll look at the architectural character, the landscape character, and really looking at ways properties can be redeveloped to fit into the historic character of this area. We know that's really important. We're really looking forward to that. So hopefully everybody can come back next month and do that with us as well. The visioning and the design guidelines is phase 2, where we're looking at the overall picture. We're developing the design guidelines. We're identifying changes to the zoning ordinance that might be necessary or appropriate to better fit the context and character of the area to address some of the concerns that are coming out from the community. Then we've got a phase 3, which is looking at opportunities, investments. There we're going to look at specific properties in the area that might be appropriate for redevelopment, what that redevelopment might look like, and making sure that that works. We're looking at what we call complete streets. We're looking at opportunities for parks and other things in the area, looking at better, I've heard interest in improved bike connections, for example. So we'll be looking at those kind of elements that fit the area and would enhance the overall historic West Des Moines area. And then phase 4 is talking about how to get that done. What are our priorities? What are the steps that we need to carry forward to see, though, that vision we defined earlier carried forward and into the future? So that's the timeline. The general idea is we're going to have those design guidelines completed and ready, hopefully, for city approval around March 1st or so. So that's the game plan for that piece of it. The overall plan we would anticipate having completely done by about this time next year, maybe a little bit earlier than that, since we've accelerated some things earlier on in the process. This area has got a great past, present, and future, we think. We've looked at, the history of the area, but this area has really always been a diverse part of the community, right? Grew out of the railroad. You've got, groups of Hispanics, Blacks, whites, all have lived in this area historically. And there's a really wonderful, rich history of this area and diversity of it that still exists today. Their character's a little bit different and maybe evolving a little bit over time, but there is really some rich history. One of the things I've heard from some of you, and I agree with, is I don't think we tell that story as well as we should, right? So there's probably some things we'll have in the plan to talk about telling those stories, both in terms of the people and in terms of the buildings and the overall area, that I think is really very interesting and fascinating. And maybe we do need to do a better job of that. But this area absolutely has a really strong, rich history over time. And I just took it to 93, but obviously there's lots of great things that have happened since then. Obviously there's pictures of the area today as it's been evolving, but there is a lot to be excited here, from wonderful landscape to beautiful restoration of buildings to some of the great events that you've got going on here and those kind of things. So we are really excited to be back and working on this effort. We do have a steering committee that we're working through this planning process with. A number of you steering committee members are here tonight. In fact, why don't you, if you're on the steering committee, just stand up so people can have an idea of who's participating in that. So if you're on the steering committee, stand up real quick. We'd appreciate that. We've got actually a meeting coming up with them on December 8th. Will be our next session with them. But they are really critical to this process. We've got business owners, we've got residents, we've got city officials. It's an organization that we can really bounce ideas off of. They can ask us questions and provide inputs to make sure, again, that this plan is reflective of what the community wants to see. This is kind of a mind map, which is just kind of an illustration of some early conversations that we had about the area and the anatomy of the community character. What's the unique character of this part of the community? And identified some of the people, the history of the area, the relationship of the neighborhood to the business district, and making new people feel welcome in the area. And those kind of things were all things that came out of that conversation, which was really good and informative to us to make sure that we understand what the character and the history of the area is. We have a poll up on the website right now. We would encourage you guys to go take a look at. And if you haven't done it, fill that out, or we're going to actually close that poll at the end of the week. But this kind of shows you some of the things we're hearing from the community so far. Again, celebrating the history of the area, looking at the architecture and the scale of buildings is really important to people. Focus on not just the commercial area, but the residential areas of the neighborhood as well. This is a clear starter home neighborhood that it should be celebrated, not removed, I guess, so to speak. So those are some, and obviously want to make sure that we have a balance between parking and the character of the area and having newcomers feeling welcome are things that we've heard so far in that survey. But if you've got some other thoughts or ideas, we'd love for you guys to share them on that online survey. And we'll probably have other surveys as we go through the process on different topics as well. So stay tuned to that. The best way to do that is to link up on the project website, historicwdm.com. There is actually a subscribe function on that that we'd really strongly encourage you guys to do. If you give us your email address, we can send you updates as we go through the planning process and let you know every time we've added new pieces of information to the website. If we have upcoming meetings, you'll get a quick notice of that. We don't share that email list with anybody else. It's just kind of an internal thing, but it's a great way to help us stay connected with you and you stay connected with us. Also on the website are just some areas where you can share information and comments with us. My contact information is on there. So if you have a question of me during this planning process, you can connect with that as well as staff as well on that site. So that is a great resource to you. Keep that in mind as we go through. This is just kind of a summary of where we are. Jason's got a cool slide in his presentation about the community he's from. I just tried to match some of the numbers that he's got with what we have here, just for comparison, right? So the area that we looked at from our parking study was about 38 acres, which is the main commercial area from 4th to 6th and up to St. Kilda's and down to Railroad. That's about 38 acres in size. The population of our study area, which essentially goes up to Grand, to Railroad to First, is about 3,700 people versus the city's population, which is about 69.5. One of the things we hear over and over again is that this area is kind of a small town and a big town, right? And that number is kind of a reflective of that. We've got about 877 parking spaces in the area, just for comparison's sake. The median income in this particular neighborhood is about 54,000. The city's overall income is a little bit higher than that, more like 68.7. So that again speaks to that affordable nature and character of the area. So this is the area we're working in. Now I'm going to introduce Jason Duff, and he's going to tell you about some of the great work that Small Nation has been doing over the last several years and give you some great insights and ideas, I think. And then we will, after his presentation, we'll open it up for questions and answers. Okay? Any questions on the overall process before I turn it over to Jason? Make sense? All right. All yours, Jason.
All right, thanks. Hi, Mike. Nice working. Hey, Mike, you can't leave me hanging. There we go. Hey, guys. Good evening.
You said Mike. I'm thinking of like the physical Mike.
Oh, no. No, I'm not going to let you off that easy. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Duff, and I am from the big town of Bellfontaine, Ohio, which happens to have many similarities to your community here. I am from a company called Small Nation, and Small Nation invests in places, spaces, and dreams for small towns, small neighborhoods, and small businesses. And I believe that small businesses are kind of a big deal. Anyone else kind of feel that way in here? So this morning, we had a blast at the breakfast meeting with our merchants and meeting with the foundation. And the thing that I walked away so impressed with is the idea of collaborating around problems. But the thing that I heard in the conversation, these problems are big opportunities for the community. We spent a lot of time this morning talking about the importance of matching preservation with innovation, and that those two things at times come into conflict. Well, I want to take the next half an hour to give you real life stories, examples, and journeys that our community has taken that I think can be prescriptive and helpful to you. Because just the time that my team member Nick and I have been here the last 2 days, I've truly learned the definition of what Iowa nice means. And I mean that. So when we arrived last night, Clyde had the chance to drive us around and give us kind of a lay of the land. And then we did dinner at Cooper's. And I love when I go to a town, one of the first things I ask is that to every restaurant or every specialty retail business, what makes your restaurant, your destination unique? And she said, have you tried our egg rolls? And I said, no. Well, the thing I learned about Cooper's is that every day they have a different egg roll special. And last night was the crab ragoon egg roll. Have you guys had that yet? You bet. If you have not had it, you're going to go down and try that out. Really, really good.
How much you paying for that one?
Here's the thing. Is part of what we have to do, and Mike mentioned in his presentation earlier, is we have to storytell. And sometimes when you live in your town, you don't realize how special it is, and you don't realize what your aces are. A lot of towns and communities struggle with the idea they bury their ace because they don't know what their ace is. And so it's been truly a pleasure being here the last few days of uncovering what I think you have some best in state and maybe even best in country kinds of experiences and businesses here. We just have to find ways to complement them and work together to not only manage the things and support the things that make it a great community, but also make it a great destination for people to visit. How does that sound? You like that? Shake your head if you like that. Okay, let's keep moving forward. So I'm gonna give you a little background about my community, and there's some similarities and there's some differences. The biggest thing is that we have similarities in our railroad history. From about 1890 to 1920, our town was a destination for a roundhouse that repaired all the engines for the Big Four railroad. That's the Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and St. Louis line. So in Ohio, Bellfontaine has a special character and history around the railroad industry. And that's why we have amazing building stock that supported the railroad workers, that supported the innovation of industry in our town. And as the communities go through cycles, many towns have not been as blessed as yours have been to see the economics stay strong, to see buildings and roofs be maintained. But some things about us is that parking is always an issue in a historic downtown. We have 614 spaces. There's about 14,000 people that live in the city. We are a county seat in a county of 46,000 people. Our county is primary industry is agriculture, but about 40 years ago, the Japanese decided to build a motorcycle plant that then 2 years after that, that became Honda. So in our community, our agriculture community, we now manufacture and build parts and supplies to support Honda and Acura. About 8 out of their 12 models are made in our town. That has also changed the needs for the historic downtown to also support the community. Here's some facts and statistics. When I first started 10 years ago, 80% of our downtown was vacant and empty. Why do I have a connection to Bellfontaine? Because both of my parents were small business owners. My dad had businesses in construction materials. We sold lumber, concrete, and stone. And my mom started a Hallmark store. So I can wrap a gift in 2 minutes or less. And part of that is, has anyone in here grown up in family business? Got a few folks here, kind of indentured servitude a little bit. Yeah. So I'm really thankful for that mentorship and support because we spent most of our family time, my sister and I, growing up working together. And the thing that I remember, when I was 13 years old and my mom had her Hallmark store, there was a company called Walmart that located in the shopping center outside of our town. The first Walmart in Ohio happened to open up in Bellfontaine, store number 1187. So I remember my parents having conversations about how they were going to innovate, compete against a mass merchandiser. I remember the shoe stores, how they were challenged, how the pharmacies were challenged. all of that as a young person, that ingrained a lot of memories and experiences and emotions. And now I'm using that to really find a way to revitalize and save small towns. Now the war is sometimes not against the mass merchandisers, it's now against the internet. So we'll talk more about that today. But here's some statistics. A lot of my friends that lived in small towns throughout Ohio, we felt unappreciated and underappreciated. And here is the problem. We felt we didn't have a voice to make a positive change because a lot of times the old guard who had all the knowledge, the advice, the wisdom, the money, they didn't appreciate the next generation. Here's why. Because we're a little weird. Because we've got different ideas, we do things a different way. And so what we found is all these unappreciated people, because a town had 80% vacancy, it could go nowhere but up. So we all descended on that town. It was not our hometown, but we found a way to work together to bring local restaurants, to create specialty retail, to create places for people to live, and to bring arts, culture, and music to an underrated town in the middle of Ohio. Here's where you guys are so far ahead. You already have best-in-class retail. You've already got a budding, growing, successful restaurant scene. Now, what's great about this community planning movement that you're doing, we're literally turning dials and fixing and tweaking things. Plus, we're also managing the challenge of the innovation versus preservation. What do we want this community to be the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 20 years and beyond? And that conversation is going to create creative differences. But that's what we're here to look at. So some big things that I loved on our visit today, love your local shopping. The window displays in this town are some of the best that I've seen in the country. And I travel to a lot of small, independent downtowns. The character, that Iowa nice, the way people smile at you on the streets, the way store owners greet you when you come in, the way the serving staff makes you feel when you're ordering off the menu, all of that is part of what is the vibe and the energy that your town has. History. And I'm so excited because most of all the stories that I ran into today, they'll tell me what the building was 100 years ago. They'll point to the tin ceiling. They'll point to the stained glass and tell me and give me the reasons why. I love that stuff. And there's a whole group of people. It's not just the retirees. It's also the new day trippers and the next generation of people that care about historic preservation. They're going to want to come, live, and experience and see your town. I really think you have a sense of community. What we have to do is market it, define it, and put it into words and put it into branding. This is a small town within a much bigger town. And I also think that we want to find ways and continue. You've got the budding scene of diversity, but we actually want to grow that too. And that's not just in age, that's also in ethnics, that's also, there's so many different ways to approach diversity today that we want to expand on. Concerns. So there's a big thing through this transition. How do we preserve our identity, that the history that has got us this far, how can we preserve that? There's lots of different phases through downtowns. It frustrates me when I see buildings from the 40s to the 70s because the modernization of that was really taking off all the historic elements and putting up metal. We don't have a lot of those serious problems, but there's also different ages of architecture throughout the town, which create different kinds of design needs and challenges. And right now you're going through massive growth. And in growth with that, it's really kind of looking at what is those business mixes versus how much do we want of commercial versus residential? How do we preserve the character of our neighborhoods? So I think that this study is going to be really helpful for that. These are different things that we've heard along the way. We aren't looking historic anymore. The buildings are completely out of character. We have seriously discussed selling our home because of these changes. The history of the railroad town is being phased away. Those are concerns that are also opportunities for us to work on and identify. The thing about your district, and every economy goes through this life cycle, you're still in that tween years where things are a little awkward. We're all trying to work to figure out what is right and what is appropriate. But those professionals, advisors, the city, working with the foundation, working with business groups, it's happening. And these are things that I know have been on the table for conversation that this group is working on. So things that may be challenges that could also be opportunities is if people want to do the day trip, where do they stay? And is that in walking distance of your historic downtown? We know that there's some restrictions with Airbnbs. We know there might be an opportunity to look at a boutique hotel, but where would that make sense? Where would you place and look at those things? And then just the cost, we're going to talk more. If you guys are building owners in here, the cost to renovate, restore, and save buildings, it's significant. Sometimes people don't know about how to find architects or engineers that can help them really decide what they need to do to stay in code or to renovate to code and compliance. The other thing is people are looking for where they can get funding to support those renovations for those activities. So we'll talk more about that. Other big things that came up is I love your antique stores. I had a chance to experience some of them today. I know that was a big part of the past, but I also think it's an important part for the future to have a great mix of retail, restaurant, and then the last one that we think has come up in a lot of conversations missing is where do I listen to live music at? Where is that great place to hear acoustic guitar? Where is that small entertainment venue that I could actually go see a show? So that entertainment piece is something that's come up a lot today. The way we all work is changing. COVID has done that. Where is the place for co-working can happen? If you don't have those great local coffee shops, where is the designated places that people that don't want to work out of their home can actually go and have a meeting, actually get out of their house? So those are some things too that we're going to show some examples that could be really helpful today. So my company, through the mistakes, the learning lessons, experiences we've had, people always ask me, what's the easy button? So the approach that we've designed is called the hustle hard approach. And for us, is we think there's a few key elements to downtown success. One is finding a way to buy and invest in historic buildings. Number two is actively recruiting tenants or businesses. And in some cases, if you can't find them, find entrepreneurs in your area that will create the businesses that you're missing. The third is getting access to capital and financing. You can have great buildings, you can have people to start businesses, but they're going to need money and resources to take those ideas further. And here's the last one that we don't really work enough on, is how can we provide ongoing coaching, support, and mentorship to our business community, especially folks that have lots of experience and knowledge. Maybe they've owned their business for 30 years. Is there a plan for them to transition that business to the next generation? And if someone new, like I experienced the candle making business today, love her energy, but I was asking her a question, how helpful was the community to you when you first started your business? And she shared that she wants to do even more businesses in town and attract other friends that are like her that want to open up businesses here too. How can we be thoughtful and intentional to support the new businesses to have the training, the mentorship, and the guidance to be successful? So the hustle hard approach has been something about identifying the people. This is Brittany Saxton. She was a line cook a dishwasher when she was 14 years old. She became a line cook, a pizza chef, an assistant manager. She opened up the first restaurant in our downtown called 600 Downtown. It was a pizzeria. And you can imagine our historic downtown when we lacked restaurants and we announced that we were opening a brand new pizzeria. What do you think people said? And there's already 13 pizza places in town. That will never be successful. There's no parking downtown. No one would want to go downtown because it's not safe at night. All those things that sometimes that we hear. Well, here's what Brittany did, is we took a building that was vacant and empty, and she recognized to bring the streetscape, the energy life, we need to have a place for outdoor dining. And so a big conversation, we went to city council and we said, there's already a perception in the community that we don't have enough parking. We need 3 parking spaces in the public right away to build an outdoor patio. We heard a lot of no's, and there were logic and reasons and valuable points for why the no's made sense. But here's the difference. Our competition in other communities that were building town centers, other downtowns, they were building outdoor patios. And this is the truth. I was saying to our city council and our leaders, if we don't find a way to create these spaces for outdoor dining, other communities will eat our lunch. Of course, that headline made the newspaper. But the thing about it is that we provided them examples like this, pictures, renderings, ask feedback for how it changed the landscape. When we put that outdoor patio in, and this is the kind of things that you don't realize that they happen. So for Brittany, Number one, she created an amazing product. The pizza, Detroit style crust, is baked in a deep dish. She also curated unique ingredients on the pizza. One of them is called the Montana, which is a base of ranch dressing, grilled chicken, bacon, and kettle cooked potato chips on top. Pretty unique. You ever ate a pizza with potato chips on it? Highly recommend it. Well, here's the thing. The Food Network picked up on her recipes, her success. She competed on Guy's Grocery Games 4 years ago and got second place out of 4 international pizza chefs from a tiny little town in Ohio. This is the next thing. The building that was next to her, in her dining room, the problem that she raised to us, she said, a lot of people are saying they want to have their birthday party here. They want to have their retirement party here. We didn't have in our dining room configurations for groups of 15, 20, or 50 people. There was a building directly next to it that was available to be redeveloped. So our town, just like yours, has an opportunity zone. This is a really special economic vehicle that was created in the 2007 Jobs and Tax Cut Act, that if you own a building and you have a capital gain, let's say you sold a piece of real estate, you can take that capital gain, buy a building. The only key is you have to substantially improve it. Number one, you negate the capital gain in. When you substantially improve the building and hold it for 10 years, whatever that property appreciates to, there's zero tax. Your entire Valley Junction district, and I'll show you an infographic later. So just a point here, we got a call from the White House, little Bellfontaine, Ohio. Of course, I hung up the phone because I thought it was spam. I really did. Well, they called back and they said, we're calling from the Office of Liaison for the President's Office. We understand that your town, you built an event space, which is called Bellavino Events and Wine Room. And it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but we put peel and sticks sewn on the walls, brick wallpaper on the ceiling, and we made it look like a wine cave behind the pizzeria. Well, it was about a $75,000 improvement to a space. We used the Tax and Jobs Cut Act. Brittany Saxton got invited to the White House. I'm sitting down here in the Rose Garden, tiny little me, but President Trump invited her up on stage, said, Brittany, we understand you make some of the best pizzas in Bellfontaine, Ohio, and you used the program to build the Bellavino Events and Wine Room. He's like, Brittany, where's the pizza? Because he wanted pizza. But it was special to see that this program is a program that you also have available in your community. We just have to find a way to get people activated to use it. That's your community. The Opportunity Zone encompasses all of the Junction area. Another thing that I'll share is as our communities, we've got to embrace our weird. I met a group of guys in our town called the Bellfontaine Body Bearding Club. It's a group of 28 guys that compete in bearding competitions around the country. Yes, that is a thing. And they decided to host an event in our town in a historic theater that was under renovation. And they said, Jason, would you please come to one of our events? And I said, guys, we have a problem. They said, oh, we'll give you a fake one. It's okay. Well, I'm happy that I attended the event because I listened to great music. I ate great food and I drank some of the most unique craft beer that I've ever had. And I recognize that people with beards know a heck of a lot about craft beer. Is that a thing? Well, in our town, we had a great pizzeria. The next thing that we found that we were missing, and this is 8 years ago, we did not have a place to get a great craft beer. People had to drive 45 minutes away to experience that. So we took a building that did not have a floor, did not have a roof, and we created the Brew Fountain in Bellfontaine. And what that did is once you start to get this restaurant ecosystem, because in the beginning, many of our restaurateurs felt that, hey, there's already 3 great restaurants in town. If a 4th comes, it's going to take business away from me. Well, here's what happened. There were a few that felt that way, but we showed them here is the difference. When the town became known as the destination for lunch or for dinner or for food, the exact opposite came. The town became known for food. And when that happened, each of these restaurants could dive in and specialize in something that made it unique that the town was a destination for that. Here's what's come from that. Directly next to the brew pub, that's a new construction, $1.4 million project that was open up in March of last year as a wedding and events venue. When COVID hit, every one of our weddings and events canceled. So here's what you have to do. We did not have a premium place to get brunch in our community. Chicken and waffles, mimosa flights, Bloody Marys. So we pivoted to do a premium brunch on Saturdays and Sundays. And then throughout the week, we converted it into a ghost kitchen because we were missing seafood in our town. So people want Captain D's or Long John Silver's. We created Captain Crackett's, which is a ghost kitchen concept that you could order online, pick up, minimize the labor. That got us through COVID. Now, here's the other thing. In the back of this, there's 2 shipping containers that we put together behind the syndicate. And we created an outdoor entertainment venue because we were missing live music in our town. So every Friday and Saturday nights, we have a different band and a ticketed event that's in the back of this building. And now that this same team that worked on these projects took an old Elks Lodge in our town and they're creating a wedding and events venue. Why are events venues important? Because they support all the other micro entrepreneurs in your community. Think of the florist, the caterers, the photographers. And another opportunity when I saw walking through your downtown, where is that place for the party? Where is that place for the small wedding, the small retirement party? That's a great opportunity with some of your spaces. Coffee. I think coffee is one of the most powerful economic development tools. This is Braden Campbell. Braden lived in Chicago for about 7 years, being a barista and becoming a part of the coffee culture. He then moved to a tiny little town in Ohio of 2,400 people and opened up only what I could describe as a miniature Whole Foods. They had Amish cheeses, deli meats, fresh produce, and his coffee bar was in the middle of this business. And I'm talking to him because I drove 2 hours because I wanted to meet him and see his business. Well, here's what I learned. He was telling me where the beans were roasted. He was telling me about how why the pour over process of making coffee, you can truly get the flavors a lot better. And and he asked, then Rivers to me, he said, where are you from? What are you doing? I'm working in a town you probably never heard of, Bellfontaine, Ohio. He smiled at me and he said, I graduated from Bellfontaine High School 10 years ago. And the first thing I wanted to do is get the heck out of that town. Because the reason was there wasn't a trajectory or a place for someone like him to live out his passion, his ideas, and his dreams. Well, here's what we did. We took a building and we staged it to look like a coffee shop before it was a coffee shop. And sometimes people need help visualizing what something could happen in a space. That's why renderings are really powerful. And that's why if you can when I walk in your town and I see how beautiful the storefront displays are, if we're intentionally trying to recruit a certain business, let's start to think about where it could go and actually maybe take a step further of rendering out what that idea is. Creating places for people to live. The dumbest thing my CPA said that I ever did was investing in doing very expensive upper floor loft apartments. Here's why. The pro forma of the construction to bring upper floor residential is very, very expensive. But I'll also flip and say it was the best investment that I have made and that we have made in our entire town. And here's why. The kind of places and experiences that we created in the downtown was something that didn't exist in small town, rural Ohio. It makes you feel like you're in a bigger city because the original hardwood floors were restored. The brick on the wall was exposed. We actually harvested saved a clock tower face that was taken out of a building that was demolitioned in Dayton, Ohio, and put a clock tower face in one of the lofts looking out the back. When the local furniture store that had been there 70 years, when we finished all these, they staged all the units with their furniture. And then we worked with the United Way to do a loft and hidden spaces tour. And in that tour, we sold the tickets for $10 and all that donation went back to the United Way. The people that went up there to take the tour, they couldn't believe that kind of housing experience could exist in our historic downtown. And within about 2 weeks, not only did we help lease all the lofts, but there were $46,000 in furniture that was sold for the local furniture store. The biggest surprise has been, this has been around now for 7 years, and your case study is in your packets. It wasn't the amount of lease money that was coming in. It was who moved into our downtown and became part of the ecosystem. These folks were retirees that maybe wanted to live in Florida a few months out of the year, but they cared about the town, the community. They didn't want to leave our area. They wanted to have a connection to it. The other thing is we saw someone that had went through a divorce, and he was a franchisee for 8 Anytime Fitness locations. And we did not have a downtown gym or fitness facility in our area. He bought a building because he was living downtown and then made a major investment of building a new gym and fitness facility in our town. But each and every one of our loft residents have become a really big part of the overall downtown ecosystem. The other thing that I will share with you, just a brief story, is I love signs. I think signs are one of the most effective ways to advertise, to brand, to communicate. And one of the biggest problems that we were having in our town is we had all these great side streets and businesses on the side streets that people in the main drag never knew existed. So I took a trip out to Napa, California. That's a great place to do research and development, by the way. All the great little tourism towns around Napa, I saw these very colorful and interesting wayfinding signs. And so I reached out to the village administrator in Napa and I said, I absolutely love your signs. How did you build them? He said, are you near your computer? And I said, yes. Let me send you the drawings. It's basically tube steel backers, and vinyl sticky backs. Well, I knew the sign code in our town would not permit anything like this, so we did a little experiment. On a Sunday, a friend of mine and I, we took a few bricks out, we used 3 bags of Quikrete, and we installed a public art experiment to promote our small businesses. On Monday, the city engineer, the mayor, were not very happy with me. But here's what we learned from this. Is this experiment in the 30 days before we had to take it down did so much to help increase pedestrian traffic, street traffic to all these unique and special businesses in our side street. Now we have 8 of these in different parts of our walking distance of our historic district. How the program works is we charge $200 one-time fee, $50 a year renewal, and all that money goes back to support our foundation, which is our Downtown Bellfontaine partnership. That takes care of the flower baskets. That takes care of keeping the sidewalks and streets clean. But I just wanted to share this example because I know part of the development plan is really looking at how we can enhance the commercial area on some of the side streets while preserving the historic homes in the neighborhoods. So I wanted to share that example. This was Lyle. So Lyle was one of the downtown Lost 110 residents. We took this building that you see here on the left. The ice storm in 2005 collapsed the roof in the building. It was vacant and empty. Now it's home to Anytime Fitness and the Loco Depot training station. When the gym located downtown, you can imagine the concerns about parking. That was a #1 concern. Here's what we learned. Most people work before 8 o'clock in the morning and after 5 o'clock at night. What the gym has done to increase the fresh squeezed juice bar that opened up next door supports the downtown coffee shops. And then many people, if they're busy and have families, they will then order food from the downtown restaurants on one of the online order apps, and they'll pick it up to take it home. It's feeding the downtown ecosystem and the community economically, socially, and also creating really awesome traffic and energy by having this downtown gym. The other thing that we've seen, our lodging in our community, I hope all of you have a chance to come visit Bellfontaine. We would love to host you. Here has been our challenge is that I could not recommend any of our local hotels and lodging for you to stay. And how we were able to solve that, our dream was to get a boutique hotel, but we weren't economically there ready. So instead, we found ways to work with solid operators of creating awesome Airbnbs and walking distance of the historic downtown. Most of the time on the second floors of many of the buildings, the downtown buildings. And these places were curated with Turkish bathrobes, really great amenities, and the price points of the Airbnbs in our town are all with the cleaning fee over $300 per night. That has been a differentiator from a price standpoint to make sure we're getting quality people and quality experiences. In terms of the lodging solutions, those are something I know a lot of communities are looking at of how to manage and support the Airbnbs through licensing. The other thing is that we're trying to do is, really solve how we can encourage investors and business owners to save their historic buildings. We're working on a block of 13 storefronts with an investor right now called the Historic Opera Block. And again, you see in the rendering, it's helping people realize how the recoloring of the storefront, working with design guidelines, how that can actually impact the entire block in town. The other thing that I want to share as an idea is that we have a lot of history in our town, just like you do here, but we did a poor job of telling those stories. So we found a brass plaque company and worked with some volunteers from our historical society to create a historic walking tour. So there's 22 different stops on each one of the buildings that are iconic in our town. And we found local organizations to fund and support with their logo that appears on it. But I just want to share that as an idea because I was asking so many questions as I was walking around about wanting to learn more about your history in your town. The other thing that I'll mention is that we're working with restaurants is I shared this with the merchant group this morning. We went as a bold idea and asked our restaurants to take dessert off the menu. Anyone ever been a server in here? Okay, yeah, I appreciate the servers. So the important things about being a server is how quickly you're turning the tables. There's two things, turning tables and you want to find goals to increase the average check. Well, the thing that we found is a lot of our restaurants, like our pizzeria had a great $2.95 cannoli. It's amazing. The brew pub has a $4 cheesecake. Many of the restaurants had great desserts, but the problem is we wanted people to buy and focus on the $30 amazing gourmet pizza, the $8 really awesome craft beer. And I asked them to do an experiment to take dessert off the menu. Of course, that did not go over very well, but when we did the 30-day experiment, here's what we found is that the amount of money the restaurants making increased, the servers were happier, and we were getting businesses to really double down and have a unique product that you couldn't get anywhere else. And that created room for dessert places. This is Angie Hall, and she opened up City Sweets and Creamery in our town. Angie had a food truck that she and her husband made kettle corn and did all the fairs around the town. She also started doing donuts from her food truck, and that's where I got introduced to her. I love to eat food, and her donuts were some of the best that I've ever had. So I begged and pleaded with her, would you please consider opening up a shop? And she said, no. Well, I heard a lot of no's. My mentor said that no, it's just a delayed version of yes. You just have to keep asking the question other ways. So I kept saying to her, what would help you be able to open up in a business in our town? She said, well, I wouldn't even know what to call it. I wouldn't even know what logo I would use. And I said, well, here's the thing. We're going to find professionals that help you with all those things. The first time she walked into the bakery, she's looking at the paint colors because we helped her with the paint. Tears start welling up in her eyes. And I'm like, Angie, what do you think? And she looks back at me and she says, I hate it. I said, why should I want to be white, like all white and clean? That's what I had in my head. I said, no, you're like opening up Willy Wonka's chocolate factory in a small town. I promise these colors will work. What I'm really proud of her, what Angie has done is to solve the problem. That was the before picture, but here was a creative use. She said to compete with Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, Tim Hortons, she needed a drive-up window. So we had an underused alleyway in our town that I went to the mayor and I said, I just have a teeny little ask. Can we reverse the alleyway? Can we raise the asphalt about 2 feet to get the drive-up window in there? And of course, he said no. But here's the thing. We did a traffic study. We worked with city council. Got the planning commission involved. She's been open now for 6 years. She opens up at 5:30 in the morning, and on Fridays and Saturday nights, because the business and traffic is there, she closes at 10 o'clock. And part of it was the intent of getting the restaurants to take dessert off the menu. So now we have Witt's Frozen Custard, City Sweets and Creamery, the Olive Tree. All three of them are dessert places in a town of 14,000 people. It can be done, and she's making really, really great money. The other thing that I'll share is that one of the smartest moves that we've done, we plan to do this pre-COVID, post-COVID, every town, every neighborhood needs something like this. This is build co-working space. So it is a shared co-working facility that for $99 a month, you get a key fob, 24-hour access, you've got great internet, Zoom-enabled conference rooms and places to work out of. And it's anchored with a taco and tequila bar called the Flying Pepper. That was the picture before. This is the building after. And I mean, part of it is finding those food truck operators and then really supporting them to actually create those kind of restaurants that you may be missing or needing in your town. This is another concept, is that we had so many micro businesses that maybe We couldn't find them a storefront on Main Street, but they needed a place to incubate and test their idea. This is the Main Street Marketplace. There is actually 24 small businesses in here, everything from boutiques, a bakery that was in our farmers market that needed a place to make their bagels and goods outside of the home. So home-based businesses moving to their commercial application. Again, the picture before, after. And then I love to double down on makers in our community. Who are people that are selling on Etsy, making great, unique things out of in their home, finding a way to get that in your stores. And I was impressed. Your retail stores have a lot of local makers already implemented, which is really awesome to see. So this is Nest 1896. I have so many, and you'll see on the back of the handout here, we have broken down the case studies, how to create a medical practice that does not accept insurance, but charges $41 a month, that we have got all of our restaurant workers and many of our small business employees utilizing. That case study is in here. We talk about the importance of building the antique district, which I think you've got some awesome antique malls in here. All of these are free and available for download on our website. But I want to point, if those of you have a smartphone and you want to sign up and actually get our free newsletter, I got a copy in there for you right now. You can scan that QR code right there. It will take us to the newsletter sign up. You'll notice in our newsletter, it's actually written, the most popular column is written by my dog, McGregor. He's a 8-year-old Sheltie, but I try to share small business tips, advice to support the ecosystem in the downtown. And it is a collaborative effort to do it. You'll see in some of our branding for downtown Bellfontaine, we call ourselves Ohio's most lovable downtown. I want to share with you how that came about. Is about 3 years ago, a lady that was probably in her 80s came up to me on the street and she said, "Are you Jason?" And that's always a loaded question because you don't know if you're going to get a complaint. You don't know what you're going to get. And I said, "Yeah, no, I'm Jason." She said, "Well, I just want to share with you, thank you for helping me fall in love with my town again." And I think one message that's real important as we chart forward in the work that we do is that there is so much history here. There are so many stakeholders that have invested so much to get the town to where it's at today. It's valuing that heritage and that history, but also identifying the businesses, the people, the future citizens and family that want to make this home and want to put their business here and want to start and invest their capital here. How do we make it really great for them going the next, 25, 40, 50, 75 years? And so that I think is the why for why I do the work that I do at Small Nation, but also why I think all of you are taking your time out tonight to be here to be a part of this conversation. So thank you so much for allowing me to share with you tonight.
Two things next. First, we want to see if you guys have got specific questions of Jason. He shared a lot of great examples, a lot of good information. So we want to give you a chance to ask some questions. Then we're going to break up into some groups and listen to you about some questions that we have of you guys. But first of all, any questions for Jason about some of the ideas that he shared or some thoughts or some challenges that you've seen in this area that he might have experienced?
You mentioned ghost kitchens. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
So the concept of a ghost kitchen is right now, well, I'll share when the pandemic hit. So we operate 7 independent restaurants in our town. And one unique thing about me is I'm trained to make pizzas and fry wings and work on a grill line. Most of all of our business owners, we are all operators at heart. So when we go into a restaurant, we can quickly identify their menu design. We can look at things like what point of sale system are they doing? I'm probably going to look at the restaurants, Yelp, Google reviews, Facebook, just to get a little taste of all of those things. So we're unique in that aspect. But the ghost kitchen is an innovation in the restaurant industry right now. That the storefront, the visible signs, tables, experience doesn't have to exist, because with Uber Eats, DoorDash, a lot of internet-based services, people are really ordering online. And then they're either going to pick that up, and it could be in a nondescript location, or the rideshare services will pick that up and bring that to your home or your business. So you're not having all of the costs. One of the most expensive costs in running a restaurant is your labor cost. So it actually allows you to lower labor cost, lower your rent cost because you probably don't need to be in the most prime part of town, but you can still build your brand and your product mostly online.
So other questions, and I would say if anybody is on Teams watching online, if you've got questions, you can type it in the chat there and we can announce those questions too. Yes.
When you started renovations, obviously, it sounds like a lot of the buildings were neglected. Did you establish historic guidelines for the renovations?
So I shared a little bit with the foundation this morning. Our community was Main Street certified in 2004, and I had a chance to be a volunteer on the promotions committee. So I watched that process, and then I joined economic restructuring. Then I was the board chair in 2007, 2008, when we lost our funding from our city and our county because the economic crisis hit. So we attended and worked so hard as a Main Street community to follow the guidelines. But when we lost our executive director, a lot of us that were volunteers and members of the board, we went into the do and action phase. So the governance of Main Street is awesome, but sometimes you can get stuck from actually not being able to take those ideas and actually go out as a private business and do. We established a historic district. I will share with you that one difference about my company, out of the $40 million that is taken to revitalize our downtown, we have not used the first public dollar. We've not used historic tax credits, new market tax credits. We've chosen to go the route to solve it entrepreneurially. Here's where we got stuck, is that the time and energy to apply and administer the historic tax credits for projects that most of the projects we do are $500,000 and less, I couldn't make the economic metrics work. And so we benefit from the historic district because we've done the research. We are established. If someone wants to go the path to take advantage of the historic tax credits, it's there and they can do it. But as a private investor, building owner, I am not required to do that. And I think there's a lot of misinformation. If we establish the historic district that we have to do that, that doesn't have to be the case.
Did you have people that wanted to build, well, obviously you do have some newer buildings. And did you encourage them to have the buildings stand out or to blend in?
So that is a zoning and planning, and I think those are important questions that you're asking here in the community. For us, it was finding a blend of preserving the historic character, but when there is new construction, finding a way where that innovation, that architecture can be appropriate. It is a hard conversation to have because you're going to get conflicting views. Where we were struggling as a town to have an identity is we wanted to appeal to a younger demographic. And to be able to do that, there were certain needs of having amenities and experiences that needed to address that group of people.
I have a question over there.
Yes, sir.
On the renovation for the historic building, what was the average cost per square foot? Can you tell me what that was?
So a lot of it's going to depend on if it's residential versus commercial and then what level. I can share that the numbers are almost up probably year over year, about 20 to 30%, because right now our access to trades labor, so electricians, plumbers, carpenters, we are really struggling with that as a community. And then the cost of building materials, everything's going up right now. But
But in the past, I mean, you've kept track of what one.
So if a building may, we have renovated 1,500 square feet and we've also renovated 40,000.
Right.
It is kind of, you get the economies of scale. If you have if you're going restaurant, that's another thing versus retail. So there's a few variables. I'd be happy to have a sidebar conversation if you're looking to do a certain project to share from experience. But those numbers, it's kind of going like this because by code, if you bring in your engineer and architect, they're going to kind of say, okay, are we going to need a sprinkler? Are we going to need an elevator? What are the major structural issues? Each building and each project has, it's not like new construction. If I go out and build a new mini storage building, I've kind of got it cleared to know what I'm going to expect. That's why the design professionals, the architects and engineers are so important, because they're going to help you try to uncover many of those unknowns. They're going to impact the renovation budget that you plan to do. Yes, sir.
With your businesses, are they you renovated a lot of older buildings, it appears. Now, does the businesses own those buildings, or do you as a group own those buildings and you're leasing space, shall we say?
In the beginning, and this is what's different from my town experience to what you have, there weren't people in line to buy any buildings. In fact, most of the acquisition cost of buildings are $50,000 and less that I showed you here, because the liabilities for the building owners to maintain the taxes, the insurance, the upkeep was much higher because there was not an economy. Your problem's a little different here. You need more buildings, and you need building owners that want to either renovate or sell to see improvements made to those properties. So our goal is, we have 50 plus buildings, but our goal is to really get the tenants to be owner operators. So giving them a path to be able to either buy on land contract or get traditional financing, because I don't want to become the Walmart of the town. Someone made the joke, well, small nation's becoming medium nation now. Like I want to make sure that we are building that diversity of ownership, because those people then have a vested interest to do even more. And it's hard to do, sometimes with the control issues, because that is something, you get some bad actors that control a number of the buildings in town, and then things get stuck. Well, some ways that we solve that is they get building codes. So if a person isn't actively marketing to rent the property, or they're not actively renovating the property, there might be a stick. So there's a fee, or there's a fine that they pay that goes into a fund where you could give a carrot to say that money then goes to people that are improving their facades. That goes to a grant program or something that the city or the community wants to manage.
A little more, if there's a scenario where maybe a party or two has a number of buildings, that this probably isn't, may not be in the position to probably take them to the level that you're talking about here. You got options to recommend in that situation like that?
Well, I believe we want to recognize their heritage and recognize their contribution, and recognize a lot of times I see that when those building owners, there's probably an emotional connection to the property, and they have a legacy they want to see or preserve. So a lot of times I'll try to pull that out of them, of why the building's important to them, what their vision and plan is with it. And I'll then try to maybe say, is there someone that you would like to mentor to help transition your business or your building? Because we're all not going to be around here forever. What is that plan to preserve your legacy, your business well into the future? And can we help you with that? I was sharing one idea in a small group today. We have actually given building owners in our town that have not been doing things. I will call them up, because sometimes you can't even get them to return a phone call. One strategy I've had is that I call people up and say, our community organization or small nation, we want to recognize you with an award. And are you available next Tuesday? And I'll go down to the trophy shop and get the most beautiful trophy and award, recognize them authentically, but that gets them to come to the table. And then when I come to the table, I'll say, we're so proud to recognize you. May we get a photo with you with this? And let's talk about your building. What do you want to do? Do you need help? Do you need some technical assistance? I know it doesn't look like the picture did 50 years ago. How can we help you with that? And then usually the tears and the emotions come out. And honestly, it's helping people work through their legacy, and then giving them a path to see it not be a financial burden, but a financial opportunity. And I think you've got some great opportunities in town for us to do that.
There is, yeah.
Other questions? Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on our proximity to other cities? There's no secret that we got a much bigger city just on the other side of the city, on the other side of the river. They have some pretty big economic plans going right now with Market District, Village, Soccer Stadium. Do we work with I really like an analogy, like create like a circular economy, Main Street circular economy, Is there like a bigger economy that we're gonna try to like fit in, that we can try to fit in with other city centers that are doing their own projects? Yeah, so like positive, negative.
Yeah, so I was trying to assess the few days I've been here is who are the groups of people that we're the perfect day trip experience for? So here's some observations. Again, I talked about how I think retail is really on point. I think that your salons are also, you've got a really great culture. What I love about salons and barbershops is that they're recession proof. So people get their hair done when the economy is good. They still get their hair done when the economy is not good. And all of those folks that come into those chairs every hour, it's number one, it's supporting a lot of independent contractors that are doing booth rent, but every hour those chairs are changing. And those folks all buy coffee, eat lunch, spend money in the stores. The thing that I just think, and these are little tweaks. So I'm going to just kind of shout a few things. Men's clothing is a need. Coffee shops, entertainment venues, fitness facilities, things like yoga. There's places in the community center that some of that stuff's happening, but I'd love to see be more intentional about it. The other thing, I think you do a really great job with retirees in that demographic of grandparents and shoppers. But like, I also think like, what is there for families to do here? Like, if you've got kids, where are those, where are the fun things for kids to do? So I think it's going to be identifying what you're already doing really well, doubling down on that, but then also tweaking the dials to fill in to different segments of people that we can welcome and have them be a part of this community too.
Other questions? Okay, then what we're going to do is ask some questions for you guys. So what we would like to do is, Brad, can you put up that list of questions on the screen for us? We've got a number of questions. Some are related to this presentation. Some are relating this presentation to Historic West Des Moines that we'd like to just have a conversation about. So we'll have one of us at each of the tables. Jason's going to kind of circulate around amongst all the tables. So if you got some more questions for him, you can certainly ask him at that point. But we've got questions like, what ideas from this presentation you think might work here? And some follow-up questions like that. So we will be talking about those at each of the tables. If you are at home or on Teams here, do us a favor, answer these questions. You can just shoot, Brad, what's your email address? So they can email them to you.
brad.munford@wdm.iowa.gov. It's pretty long, but at the bottom there, the Historic West Des Moines.
Or you just go to the website and contact, it's all there.
That's probably a lot easier to type in.
Yep, absolutely. So if you can type in some of the answers to the question, we'd really appreciate it. But for now, if you guys can just group yourselves, if you're by yourself, join another table in groups of 5 or 6. We'll have a facilitator at each table and we'll kind of go through these questions. We're going to take about 30 minutes or so to do that. Then we want to report back and what each table talked about briefly. Okay, so that's the plan. So if you can group the tables, we'd appreciate that. All right. Since I have a microphone, maybe I'll just bring it around the room. Are you, this is all on video, Brad?
So it is now.
All right, then, when you're coming up to talk about what your table was talking about, come up here, okay? And I'm gonna get rid of the mic. So I was at this table back here, had a great conversation. Some of the things we talked about that they saw in the presentation that thought were great ideas and would be wonderful to see more of here. The loft apartments. Everybody thought that was a fantastic idea. We know there's some economic challenges with doing that, but it could be a really great addition to this area and better utilize some of that spaces. Some of the other ideas that were in the presentation that were, maybe appropriate here, maybe a gym would make some sense here to do. Maybe not some of the uses that we saw there, but there was one participant that really would love to see a soda fountain or a bagel store brought back to this area, right? So maybe not the same thing exactly, maybe not the donut shop, but maybe a bagel shop or some other kind of thing like that, or even the classic soda fountain. We're going to talk about some more examples of some of the steering committees or other communities. There's a community in Washington, Illinois that still's got a soda fountain and it kills. It does really a great job. So there are old businesses like that that still can do really well in a unique location like this. They were very specific to say that we don't want to be East Village, right? We want to remain historic West Des Moines. We don't want to duplicate, and we don't want to be necessarily known as hipsters. We want to be kind of our unique element and our unique diversity in this area. If we need to grow commercial uses and really residential use, well, particularly for commercial, we talked about not so much going north to the 400 and 500 block of Fifth, but maybe looking more to 4th or 6th, or looking at some of the side streets like Maple and that kind of thing to expand some of those commercial activities, particularly with destination businesses that don't necessarily have to be right on Fifth, right? So if you got a business where you're drawing from the whole Des Moines region, maybe it can be located a little bit off of Fifth and still be successful. We talked about also trying to better utilize some of the property that is south of Railroad and bringing that into the mix and thinking about that as opportunities either for a hotel or for apartment building or maybe even some additional commercial uses. So those are some of the kind of key things that came out of that group. Any major things that I didn't highlight here that you guys want to highlight real quick? Good. All right. Awesome. All right. This table.
Volunteer.
If you come up, whoever's going to talk, just because we want it on film.
Yeah, you go.
I know you. Come on up here.
You're so fashionable. I am.
You don't have to, you don't have to. These minutes are pick it up.
All right, what we talked about was that we think with number one, we've got a lot of that stuff already going on as far as, the new development that they brought in and stuff like that in buildings that were condemned or the roof had fallen in. He talked about one of those with, I think it was the fitness shop. We don't have that issue down there. Okay, so we've got a lot of the stuff already going on that they created in Bellfontaine. So we didn't think that was a big issue. As far as number two and number three, both, that belongs south of the tracks on Railroad. Okay, it's already empty land. They talked about, access. I know it's been discussed, in previous years and stuff, but basically a pedestrian bridge that would connect south of Railroad to the north side of Railroad. I know they're expensive, but we're already doing it at Raccoon River Park and putting a pedestrian bridge to connect Raccoon River Park to Walnut Woods State Park. So if we can do it out there, we can do it here. There was talk about with the 500 block, if you go up there and do it, you're taking out single family houses. Although it's already zoned for commercial, you're taking out single family housing, and there wasn't any support for tearing down houses to build more buildings. That's why they're saying go where the empty land is, go south. As far as number four, I don't know we really talked about that too much other than we want to stay with what we've got in Valley Junction. Don't want to be the East Village in West Des Moines. So.
All right. Awesome.
Did I cover it all? All right.
Clyde, your table.
Okay, in terms of number one, one of the things that we talked about was historic walking tour and something to do, celebrate our history, that we don't really do enough to celebrate our history. Also, there was a lot of discussion about we have a lot of ethnic groups in the neighborhood, but yet we have no restaurants, like that, where a Mexican restaurant or a soul food restaurant, things of that nature that would be good calling card for the commercial district and also celebrate, our history there. Coffee shops, live entertainment, also like toy store, ice cream store, things of that nature. Also family-friendly businesses and entertainment, things for families to do. There was a feeling that, the entertainment or what uses were there were geared more towards adults and not families per se. Then in terms of the second question about commercial development and where should it go, I think certainly there was support for expanding or at least in making major improvements on the commercial along Railroad Avenue. That there was some sentiment about the expansion of some of the commercial up Fifth Street, that it would need to be respectful of the residential uses that are there. Let's see. On the third one of the comments that was made there in terms of there was support for additional multifamily residential, but they felt that there should be parking made available by whoever's developing those residential properties. And then on the last one of the comments that we heard was need for wider sidewalks in the commercial district. Feeling was that because all the street furniture and everything else we have there, the sidewalks are kind of narrow, and it's difficult particularly if you're a family and you're trying to hold on your kid's hand and walk down the street and you meet somebody coming to you, somebody's got to get out of the way. So there was a desire that the sidewalks be more family friendly and wider in that neighborhood.
With the parking the way it is, one narrow lane up the middle going up Fifth Street.
Well,
where are you going to get the room?
From a mass standpoint, actually the depth of the parking stalls way exceed what is necessary for that type of angle parking. So there is actually room. You could narrow up the street and still not lose any.
How much are you going to be gained by doing that?
Well, that's something for a traffic engineer.
I'm just all my life and I just can't see it.
Okay, I'm just reporting to the group what was said. So is there anything from my table that I missed or needed that you want to add on? Okay.
All right. Christine, I think you're back there, right?
All right, we were not very rule followers, good rule, sorry.
My group wasn't either. That's
We
okay.
were more just general discussion. Okay, so consensus, we want a lot more retail on Fifth Street, more of the professional services on the side streets or Fourth and Sixth. Keep those retail on Fifth Street, keep that traffic going. Definitely, we love the idea of a coffee shop to encourage all day activity, people in and out, people able to come and do that co-working space if they want to do that. Housing, we talked about more on Railroad to the west, 5th, 6th, 7th, go west. Seemed appropriate spaces for that, except we were worried about height along Railroad because southern exposure, if you have a house and you're just a couple of houses north of Railroad and we put in a tall building, you're going to block that view and that light that those people are used to. So that's a concern that we have to look at if we're talking about housing along Railroad. We love the Market Street idea. Particularly, there might be a building that already has some dividers with fences in them anyway, we like the Market Street idea. There was concerns about one or two developers that are doing most of the work right now that are coming in, buying the properties and doing the work. And what does that mean? What are the consequences of that? And how do we encourage more people, not developers, that's such a a weird word. We talked about the definition of what is a developer, but bringing in more people to buy property, invest in our neighborhood, and own those pieces of property and revitalize them. So how do we bring in other people? And then there was also a discussion of, we have merchants meetings and resident meetings, but we don't necessarily have property owner meetings, people who own the buildings and lease them that maybe don't own their own business. So we need to hear from those folks as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Christine. Erin. You haven't met her yet. Erin Sigliano works with Tesco Associates, and she's kind of my partner on this project. So go ahead, Erin.
Again, right when we finished, I'll start with someone shouting murals. So murals, but some of the ideas that really resonated. So the micro boutique hotel, something small scale to really showcase the neat experience that is Valley Junction and historic West Des Moines. That would also cater to the folks and businesses that are already here to keep people in the area. High-end lofts resonated, the idea of co-working spaces. An interesting concept we chatted through was micro retail. So can the front of a building cater to retail, but maybe the back cater to service? There are interesting alleyways. There's opportunities to do this. It caters to the foot traffic while also maximizing the square footage. Seating. The existing seating is always taken. So can there be more seating in interesting places? Can that be maximized with strategic parklets or bump outs, but the desire for seating and the power of stay power with keeping people in the district. We chatted through a few challenges as well as opportunities, that being, Main Street, Iowa provides support for renderings. People are very visual, and to see these improvements, especially in a historic district, really helps. The idea of having welcome packets to share information regarding permitting, events, trash, different incentives that businesses can take advantage of, as well as demographics could be really helpful to businesses and those wanting to come here. And the power of pop-ups. So if you're wanting to open a business, pop-up could be a way, if there's an opportunity to do those spaces, for people not to invest so much and be able to experiment with their business models. With regard to residential, we chatted a bit about the love of this being a starter home community and wanting to transition from rental to the ability to have more ownership in the residential areas. It was cited from our last plan that rental housing was close to 60%. So how can you build ownership within the neighborhood? We chatted through the opportunity to grow within your house too. So if you have a single room house and then you start a family, you don't necessarily want to move. So are there opportunities to grow within those houses or update them? And then finally, we hit on a few specific locations. So one being the intersection of Linwell and Vine, being some really great residential examples to consider as part of our visual preference survey. If you have others, submit them via the website. That'll be great food for thought for us. And then the example of Massachusetts Street in Lawrence, Kansas, being a really great example to look to. And the last note is, it's also important to understand what people maybe don't like about East Village, because it is very likable, so that Valley Junction and historic West Des Moines can set itself apart there too and look for opportunities. Anything I missed?
All right. Ed, somebody from your table? Who's good?
Really like your note if you got all the colors. Walk up with my little notepad here.
All right, well, like Christine's group, wherever you are, we kind of took a meandering approach to our conversation. So we're not going to answer questions quite like this, but I'll do my best here. So some of the topics and ideas that resonated with this particular group were the whole concept of refurbishing and refreshing, just the whole look and feel of the historic theme of what we're dealing with here. The idea of putting things that you already have to use, especially those upper floors. Some of the ideas around using them for the bed and breakfasts, the co-working, the co-location, working with remote working from home right now being so very popular, or hybrid work arrangements. So you've got people working sometimes from home, sometimes from the office, and having a place for them to go where they can kind of be in the heart of things. We liked that idea. There is some concern about some of the look and feel of the newer buildings right now, and the discussion turned toward how do you preserve the look and feel of what we have today with what's being built today in this kind of in-between time. So we've got zoning that maybe isn't guiding new builders toward that look and feel of Valley Junction. But our hope is that over time with the new zoning, or potentially new zoning, we begin to build that look and feel back into any additional property that gets built or refurbished. Let's see. So that kind of brought us along a path of, again, preserving history was important to us, but also we talked about some of the look and feel of the newer buildings adds a little bit of interest to the, I think, what do you call it, skyline of the street. And so there was, we had a really good conversation about how do you preserve the history, but how do you also embrace the future? And one of the questions that we really need to ask is, how do you define history? And that was a question Brad asked us at our table. How do you define historic? Because there's heart historic, there's a head historic, there's an actual definition, there's historic Valley Junction that maybe goes up to the line of the old courthouse versus where West Des Moines starts, those kinds of things. So really maybe defining what is historic. Is it physical? Is it reminiscent of historic? Does that count? And then kind of getting folks on the same page there. In terms of what we'd like to see more of, we talked about the 300 and 400 blocks of Fifth Street, as well as the railroad corridor. We actually talked a little bit about, very briefly, the other side of railroad, and could you do something there, having a bridge or a pedestrian walkway or what have you, to kind of expand out and have some more opportunities there. I think that is pretty much it.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Great input tonight, folks. We really appreciate the time. Jason, thanks so much for coming out and sharing some of your thoughts and expertise from Small Nation. We will be back, as I said, December 15th, right here, doing what we call a visual preference survey. But it's going to look at a lot of those architectural issues that you just talked about, right? What is here now that we want to use as a model? What are some things from other places that might fit or might not? So we can begin to develop those design guidelines to direct and manage for future development. We also do have a steering committee meeting on December 8th. That will be live on Teams, just like we're doing tonight, for anybody that wants to watch and take care of those. It is on the city's website, the link for those things. Did you have another question, sir?
Yeah, was there any input online?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. How many people are online, Brad?
At one point, we were up to 5, and then it kind of trickled down drastically during our discussion.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll stick around if anybody wants to chat more, but we appreciate it.